do we have the right to insult? I mean, I don't walk around in my day-to-day thinking, I'd really like to insult somebody, but do I have the right to do it?
Not just the right, but there's a necessity to offend.
Douglas Murray, Muslim scholar Mariam François, and Richard Dawkins diving into BBC's The Big Questions to tackle the burning issue. How far should free speech go? In today's intriguing video, Douglas Murray makes a blunt and clear-cut statement about free speech. Here's how it all started when the interviewer asked the question.
Well, this week the comedian Ben Elton said that the BBC is too scared to make jokes about Islam. There were protests by Christians outside a lecture by Richard Dawkins, who's here with us today. That was in Inverness. And a few months ago, the Oxford Union caused an uproar by giving a platform to Holocaust deniers. 60 years on from the enshrinement of freedom of speech as a human right by the UN, we ask, does that mean we have the right to offend?
Imagine living in a world where people get offended by everything. That's the reality we face today. But does that mean we should tiptoe around sensitive topics to avoid hurting feelings? Let's watch Douglas Murray would have to say.
Not just the right, but there's a necessity to offend.
I think we have to get used to the fact that offense is inevitable. It is the consequence of an action. And as Douglas said, it is a necessity, in real. It is bound to happen and cannot be avoided. We should resonate with that.
I know Jet Wilders a bit, who made the film in Holland. I knew the people who made the last film that did this in Holland. Of course, Theo van Gogh was shot and beheaded on the streets of Amsterdam, and his colleague Ayaan Hirsi Ali was chased into hiding. People are very aware of the danger of criticising Islam. They take the lesson from it, and a lot of people still fail, despite this, to realise the incredible irony at the root of all this, which is a group of people who say my religion is peaceful, or I'll kill you.
Continuing his assertion, Murray points to a Dutch movie that criticised Islam and was taken off the internet. Why would that happen? Why would the Islam worshippers be so keen on slandering anything that touches their belief? That is definitely an irony of their belief system. Do you know who uses violence as a response to criticisms? Gosh.
Honestly think that they're likely to be killed for making a joke about Jesus Christ. No, of course not. There's The Life of Brian. There's countless films about it.
Douglas made a valid point here. No one slanders the belief of the Christians and expects to receive violence as a response. Muslims should understand that free speech is a fundamental right, and it is impossible to prevent someone from expressing their thoughts freely. The interviewer went ahead to ask Mariam François, a Muslim scholar.
We need freedom of speech. We need the right to ridicule. We need the right to offend, don't we?
Let's take a look at what Mariam has to say. She advocates for peaceful dialogue and challenges the necessity of asking if we have the right to insult. Why would she make such an assertion? She does not understand that we all get offended. Everyone expects to be offended.
Well, personally, I mean, I'm European through and through, and I would absolutely not want to legislate on people's right to express their opinions, and absolutely. But I think more worrying is, why are we asking the question of, do we have the right to insult?
Really, Mariam? So, we're just going to tiptoe around everyone's feelings and pretend that freedom of speech only includes polite conversations? What's next? Should we all walk on eggshells to avoid any hint of offense? Because real progress is made when we avoid difficult conversations altogether. Next up, the moderator asked, why did people take offense? Mariam responded and said,
And absolutely not. There's been an astounding reaction to it. People have loved it, and they've loved the insight that this has brought into kind of the day-to-day of normal Muslims, not the ranting and raving people that we typically see on TV.
Well, these deeply religious people believe they are somehow entitled to not being offended. They are forgetting that they are constantly offending rational thoughts and logic, as well as their practice contradicts the convictions of morality.
If I was to come on TV and start insulting, I hate to be crass, but your mother, that would be extremely offensive. Now, we feel as strongly about our mothers as we do about the Prophet Muhammad. That doesn't mean you can't discuss what he says.
Douglas gave a quick response.
You can't discuss what he says, the
every
message
single
he
day,
brings,
people in this country
but
put
there's
up
no
with
need
being
to be crass
offended.
about
Walking
it.
down a street, you get offended. There's somebody wearing something you don't like, or you
Absolutely, and we
you
get on with
offended.
it.
It's part of being grown up. It's just accepting the fact that you get your feelings trodden upon. Does it mean you have to deliberately tread on people's feelings? No, not necessarily.
Exactly.
But what you cannot do is to ring-fence one ideology through fear, intimidation, or anything else. And that is what we see happening. That's what Ben Elton was saying.
It is so plain from Murray's thought. Why can't we criticize? Why should we be fearful to point things out? Sure, insulting someone's mother is offensive, but the issue isn't about being offensive for the sake of it. It's about the importance of open discussion, even about sensitive topics. Just like we can discuss historical figures or ideas critically, we should be able to talk about all beliefs, including religious ones, without fear of backlash. It's not about disrespecting anyone, it's about fostering dialogue and understanding, even if it makes some people uncomfortable. The moderator, not satisfied, moves to Richard Dawkins, a professor and atheist.
Professor, you've obviously, a lot of people have taken offence at some of the things that you've written. You know, they feel personally offended because they feel that their faith, which is so dear to them, and their belief, which they cherish, you're criticising it. Do you think about that?
Well, let's see how he intelligently responds.
I don't go out of my way to offend.
No, but do you think about the possible consequences?
If people are offended, then they may argue against me. All I use is words. There's a radical distinction between using words and violence, and incitement to violence.
Professor Richard went ahead to cite Salman Rushdie, who was given various death threats.
The Salman Rushdie affair absolutely brings this out. Salman Rushdie simply wrote a book. That's what he did. He wrote a book. He was threatened with death. He was threatened with death by baying crowds in this country. People burned his books. They demanded the death penalty.
And some leading parliamentarians suggested that the paperback shouldn't come out.
Some leading parliamentarians, some leading clergymen, some leading bishops sided with the Ayatollah Khomeini rather than sided with this very distinguished novelist who did no more than put words on paper.
This has been said over and over again. Violence is inhumane to humanity. Why melt such acts on a human because they aired their opinion on a subject matter? That was harmless. This bothers me so much. Why would some person who camouflages as a religion want to melt harm to people who speak freely? No one is off limit to ridicule. If you are offended by it, so what? I love the fact that Dawkins is so brave and awesome with his speech. Going on, the moderator brings up offensive comments about Jesus. But Douglas isn't here to play nice, he responded.
He was threatened with death by baying crowds in this country.
We often overlook that Islam aims for a broader scope of what is considered free speech, yet it struggles to control it. They don't have the right to call the shots on what offense is and should accept the fact that offense is bound to happen. Why should criticism meet threats and statements to ridicule violence? Douglas made sure we understood his concerns. He went ahead.
And these are what some Muslims do in response to that. That's not a lie, that's just a statement of fact.
This has been repeated many times. The Islamic religion seeks to suppress any speech they perceive as hateful. Douglas goes ahead to buttress the fact that being offended is part of life. If you don't like what I am wearing, then I don't give a damn about what you think. We all just have to grow up. I doubt anyone intentionally waits to be offended, but some individuals in the Islamic community are quick to react strongly to anything they perceive as offensive. Murray, in another interview, also states something important. Watch out.
Is there any limit to free speech? And I'm rather disturbed we're still discussing this. I'm sorry, no, we're not adapting our own speech codes. We're not going to make ourselves more sensitive to people. We in the West still have this pathetic discussion about, what are the limits of free speech?
We will agree that Douglas has been a long advocate of free speech and arguments on the necessity of free speech and ad. In the debate, he clearly stands on his point. If we remember the Andalusian period, where scholars of various faiths engaged in vibrant discussions and shared knowledge freely, contemporary Muslim thinkers such as Tariq Ramadan argue that free speech is compatible with Islamic values when it is exercised responsibly and with respect for others. So where do the violence melted on free speech come from? Because, to the best of my knowledge, free speech are harmless. It is important to note that this intellectual talk stands for the essence of free speech. Is it possible for the Islam religion to agree with the need for free speech? Or do you think they will still have a firm grip on violence and mayhem? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Please like and subscribe for more videos on the enigma. Douglas Murray.